Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. With you, your server Manena on another interview of A Girl Talks Formula One. Today, my special guest of the day is Kiwi. Yes, I've said this joke before. I actually say it in the interview. Okay, yes, I have a Kiwi for you today with me. New Zealander Jono Lester. Jono Lester is a GT racing driver, and he's actually the third generation of racing in his family, and he has big plans for his future, not necessarily just related to racing. Want to find out more? Don't miss this interview in 3, 2, 1, let go. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Girl Talks Formula One. With you, your server Manena, and for you, I have a Kiwi. What do I mean with Kiwi? New Zealander, Jono Lester. Hi, Jono. Welcome to the
Hi.
Girl Talks Formula One.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really pleased to chat with you.
So are we. We would love to know your perspective about motorsports because, guys, Jono Lester is actually in the GT category. So tell us a little bit what this category makes it so different from the Formula One.
Well, I guess for a start, we have a roof over our heads. So the background or the focus of GT racing is the silhouette of the car, the way that the car looks. Is very much like your supercars that you would see on the road. So your nice Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all these nice cars that we all aspire to maybe own one day. That is the kind of look of the vehicles that we race. So it's a category which around the world under the FIA, which obviously looks after Formula One as well. The focus of GT racing is that each manufacturer, be it Ferrari, Porsche, BMW, whoever, they will build a specific model from their range, which will fit the GT regulations. And then before they go racing, before they're sort of signed off to be sold to teams and go racing, they go through what's called a balance of performance test. So because, of course, say a big Bentley and a low slung Ferrari and rear engine Porsche are all very different shapes and sizes and power and whatnot. Before they're signed off and sort of sealed, they do a test where we make sure that all of the vehicles are very even in the lap time. So maybe some cars have to have a little bit of power removed, or maybe the turbocharged cars need to have some of the turbo boost lowered a little bit, maybe add some more weight or other means to try and equalize the race cars. And then once we go racing, they all have their various strengths and weaknesses. So maybe it's the temperature of the country you're racing in, or the nature of the circuit. One day you'll see, a Porsche at the front. The next it might be a Honda. So it's a manufacturer-based series, and it's great for me because I get to drive some of the cars that I grew up wanting to own one day. I don't own one. I wish I did, but I get to drive some pretty cool ones for my teams. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You basically live the dream life of driving your dream cars and you get paid for it. So that's like the best of both worlds.
It certainly is, yeah.
I like what you said about equalizing the car, and what you said that, every race a different driver could win, which I really like these kinds of categories because it really measures, the talent. It's not like, oh, Mercedes is the best car or Red Bull is the best car. That's why Lewis Hamilton won again, So that's really, really nice to hear. And you actually come from a motorsport family, don't you? You're the third generation Lester. You've had your grandfather, your father, your aunt, your cousin, and now you. What does this feel like to grow in this environment?
To be honest, I've never known anything different. Motorsport is has been part of my life ever since I can remember. So, I think when I was 2 weeks old, my father was racing in the New Zealand Grand Prix. So there's lots of photos of me, as a baby with him in the pit. I didn't grow up maybe like many race fans where you become a fan of motorsport and then aspire to become a driver. I was just sort of it was there. My grandparents built one of the racing circuits here in New Zealand called Manfield. So even after school every day, I'd be at the racetrack. My father had a workshop there, running his team. My grandma was running the administration side. My grandfather was promoting all of the events that were at the racetrack. So across the board, from being drivers, from running race teams, from doing all of the various different roles in motorsport, our family have done it. So I didn't grow up actually wanting to drive, to be honest. I think it was too much of a good thing. I kind of became maybe desensitized a little bit to actually just how amazing and cool and aspirational, I guess, motorsport was to many people. I didn't really feel that way. I played football, real football, like soccer,
Right. That's a
not
real football
rugby.
for me.
Yeah, played football, and I, hung out with my friends and did other things. I certainly didn't do go-karting or anything. I actually got started quite late as a driver, but the way it all came about was, I think, to be honest with you, my dad was never really very creative with birthday presents. He,
So
you
you
know
were
what dads
keeping
are
it
like. So I think one day my birthday was coming up, my 13th birthday. In New Zealand, we can start racing real cars when we are 12.
Okay.
So I was 12 years old. My birthday was coming up, and I think he was a little bit lost with an idea for a gift for me. So the easiest thing for him, of course, was to say, well, do you want to spend a day in a race car? And of course I said, yeah, that sounds fun. We did it. And I tell you what, the moment I exited the pit lane and put my foot down, my life changed. Ever since that moment, all I wanted to do was drive race cars. So that's when I caught the bug, if you like. Ever since, that's all I've wanted to do. It became a passion like that. So now I know why my family love it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you had such a casual childhood. I mean, come on, who doesn't grow in motorsports, right?
Yeah, I know. And that's what my friends at school used to say. Like, they obviously were aware that my dad raced cars and my granddad, and that we got to go to all of these cool places, traveling, went to Le Mans and all these things like this. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's quite cool, but maybe I didn't appreciate just how special that was at that age because of my upbringing. But certainly now, with some perspective, if I look back, I realize I was very lucky. Yeah.
Definitely, because it's a different kind of childhood, which I bet a lot of people would want. And
Yes.
speaking of your family in motorsports and you as a young kid, your grandfather actually founded quite a few programs and developed a few programs for drivers. Did he
Yes.
ever train you in any way?
So that was more my father. My grandfather was more involved on the road safety.
Okay,
So open road driving
right.
programs for young people to learn to drive and be safe and responsible. But with my father, his job, once he stopped racing, was to coach drivers.
That's amazing.
And so he's actually he's coached some top drivers from your part of the world, not necessarily Mexico, but from Brazil. Luciano
Okay.
Berti, who was in Formula One. He came through. He actually lived at my house when I was a young boy, and so I grew up around that. But yeah, I think my father's biggest strength was as a coach and as a team manager. He was of course my coach. And I think that really helped me because I didn't do go-karting. I went straight into Formula V, which is like, I'm not sure if you have it in your part of the world, but basically a very small open wheel car, kind of like Formula Ford, but even smaller, only a 1200cc engine. Of course, without the go-karting, I hadn't learnt the basics and the racecraft and all of these things that young go-karters learn from 6-7 years old. So
Right.
my strength, or the ability to get up to speed quickly, was because of my father. He was a very, very good coach. And of course, because we had access to Manfield, to the racing circuit, I could go out there after school and I could do laps and laps and laps and laps. And we got
I
to
can
learn in
imagine.
a very structured environment. I remember go out after school, and he put me in, say, a Formula Ford, and he would say, right, today we are only working on braking, the correct braking technique. And he would say to me, if I hear you, in his workshop, if I hear you out there trying to go fast and set lap times, you're off. I just want you to focus on the skill, not the lap time, not being the ego and the hero. And then the next day, maybe it would be like the heel toe, the technique of rev matching with the downshift H pattern gearboxes. So I got to learn in an environment without the pressures of racing, just simply driving. And that was very beneficial for me. Yeah, very thankful to my whole family for the foundations they put in place so that when my time came, it was actually, the pathway was already there for me.
Definitely. Yeah. I have to agree with you. And even though, like you said, you didn't start at such an early age, like 4, 5, 6, whatever, you did start quite early. I mean, it was a good age, 12. What is your fondest memory, your first victory? What is a memory that you cherish the most from when you just started competing?
From the early years. Okay.
I mean, if you still remember.
Oh, of course. I remember most of my races. We had some maybe not fond memories, but some very ones that stick with me. I was very nervous when I first started because I felt like I had a lot of pressure to make my dad and my family proud. Because they had all been drivers, I felt a lot of pressure. My first maybe 3-4 months of racing, before every race, I had to vomit just to get rid of the anxiety and the nerves. And so it became a routine. I'd go out behind the truck and I would vomit, and then I felt okay, and I went and drove, and it was fine. And so that still sticks out definitely as a very prominent one. Maybe not a fond memory, but I guess it showed just how much I cared about doing a good job. And of course, there was never actually pressure from my family, but naturally you want to make your family proud. But I think, and this was a few years later, but I think one of my probably still my fondest memories in my whole career was once I graduated from the junior categories into the Carrera Cup, Porsche Cup, I got to take both my grandma and my grandfather for a hot lap at their racetrack. And my Nana's case, she had never, in 30 years there, she had never been on the racetrack. She'd only ever been in the background. So that was very special for me. She was a really good passenger, like she really enjoyed it. But then I remember he came into the pits after, and I kind of looked across and she wasn't moving. And I was like, oh my goodness, like has she had a heart attack or something? And I freaked out. And so there's actually a GoPro video of it, and you can see the fear in my eyes, and I'm sort of shaking her like, no. And then eventually and she's like, okay, I'm here, I'm okay. I think she just needed a moment.
Yeah.
But it was, that was a really special moment. We had my whole family there, and it was nice after so many decades. They put their heart and soul into this racetrack. It was nice to give her a special experience like that. It was really cool.
Yeah, I feel those are the kind of experiences that you cherish the most, the things that nobody really sees. Everybody goes like, oh, I bet your first victory, I bet your first win, I bet your first, like the things that everybody sees, but it's normally those kinds of memories, the ones that come closest to your heart. And I actually wanted to thank you for sharing another thing that nobody sees. What you said, your memory that you had as a kid. Everybody only likes to share the pretty things, And here you shared something so real that maybe not so many kids, whether they're girls or boys, like to share because they feel they're the only ones experiencing that thing, And it's nice to share these kinds of things so that people can feel more relatable and like they can feel, like they're not the only one in the world experiencing the same thing.
And trust me, I'm very open, as you can tell now. But also, this is an easy thing to say, but I genuinely mean it. Drivers, we're just people like everyone else, right? Maybe if you're a racing fan and you follow what we do, you maybe put us on a pedestal, but we still have the same fears and doubts and problems and challenges. Perhaps we live it out in the public eye a little bit more, but we are still just the same as anybody else. And we just get to drive cool cars at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And travel around the world. I mean, hello,
Yeah.
you've been practically everywhere. And you started very young competing in the GT3 category and in the GT racing around 17, were you?
Yeah, 16. So
Okay.
so at the time, to be honest, it was before like GT was really a popular thing, and even championships like Carrera Cup and Super Cup was tailored more towards the older. And when I say older, I'm talking like 30 plus age professional drivers, or your gentleman drivers, businessmen, guys like that, right? We reached a point with I guess it was a crossroads for me where, well, we had three options actually. And when I say options, maybe that's the wrong way of wording it, but we had to choose a pathway, right? And this is something that now that I'm a little bit older, I always try to explain to young drivers. I'm mentoring a couple of young drivers here now and trying to explain exactly what I'm about to tell you. And that is, there's so many cool cars and championships in the world, right? But it's so hard to make it to the professional level that if you don't dedicate yourself to one pathway, whether it's open wheel or touring car or GT or NASCAR, whatever that particular pathway is, it's hard enough to make one work, let alone trying to do them all. So of course, the smart, pragmatic approach is to say to yourself at a young age, okay, look at obviously all of the factors. And in my case, we thought, let's go GT, because we know that open wheel, of course, even if you are super talented, you need so much money behind you. Formula One is out of reach for pretty much everybody except the elite. And we are a small country. So a wealthy backer in New Zealand is a small fish in Europe. So that was never an option for me. And for most Kiwis, to be honest, you look at a lot of our professional drivers now, and we choose from a young age to go GT and touring car because we know there's a more realistic chance we can become professional. We can make a career doing what we love. While it may not be Formula One, we have a better chance to make it in one of these other areas. So circling back, that's the decision I had to make. And no one was doing GT of my age. We actually had to apply for a special license to race Carrera Cup. Firstly, we tried when I was 15. Motorsport New Zealand just laughed at me and said, no chance. So then we went away and we worked hard and we came back with perhaps a better pitch or a better case the next year, still only 16. And even then they said, you're still too young. And we pushed and we pushed and we pushed. And eventually they said to me, okay, we're going to give you a temporary license for three events. And if you fail, or if you make an idiot of yourself or you cause an accident or whatever, if you fail, we will make an example out of you. This is actually what they said to me. We will make an example out of you, and everybody else following behind you will suffer the consequences, I guess. So
this is why we don't hire young people.
There was a lot of pressure because it was really down to me in that sense that if I showed that young guys deserve to be there, then the other young guys will get the chance. Anyway, so we got the license, and then I think the third round or the fourth round, I won my first race.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So of course we deserved to be there. At the time, that made me the youngest, of course, winner in the world because I was the youngest driver in the world for Porsche Cups. And after that, the floodgates opened, and the next season there was probably 5 or 6 guys my age doing it.
You're the founder, basically.
Yeah. So. Well, I wouldn't say that, but it was going to happen regardless. GT started to get popular, and so of course, eventually, if it wasn't me, it was going to be somebody else. But young guys who yeah, I guess so. I'll take that. But So yeah, we chose GT. I stuck to it. I believed in the potential to, to make a career and drive these amazing, beautiful cars, gorgeous supercars. And it wasn't easy, of course, it never is. We had so many setbacks, and even though we have a motorsport family, we aren't wealthy. So it was always chasing sponsorship and cutting corners, actually, because in a lot of cases we didn't have enough money, so we'd have to use the used tires and the used brakes and older parts to try and kind of cut costs. So many drivers have to do this. I'm not alone.
And I
But
actually, I actually support that because that makes you really get to know the car, you know? I feel
yes, it
that if
does.
you are always trying the new tires and the new chassis and the new everything, you don't really know how hard it can get to be
Yeah,
driving
yeah.
on used tires or you.
And on the other side of it too, by having to beg, borrow, and steal, not steal, but the term,
Yeah.
to make the budget, you develop a work ethic from a young age
Definitely.
that will see you through your entire life in racing and business and other things. I'm very actually thankful that I had to push so hard and work so hard to make the grid, because I think if it had come easy to me, if I had a wealthy family or a rich sponsor, when things get tough and you haven't really had to work for it, it's pretty easy to just walk away and say, it's getting too hard now.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, there was no chance I was going to give up. It was tough at the time, but it was a really great discipline to learn, and that's why I'm still driving now so many years later. So yeah.
And congratulations, because you are really inspirational. I mean, clearly you've seen you're not only an inspiration to people in New Zealand, but to people around the world. So you must be doing something right, Jono. And something that you mentioned earlier that I really wanted to talk about. I feel it's not necessarily about getting to the Formula One. That's the thing. That's why there's so many motorsport categories. Everybody thinks they want to reach the Formula One until they realize they actually like driving another type of car better. I mean, we have the example of Stoffel van Doorn. He was in the Formula One and then he moved to the Formula E and he's so much happier there.
I was just going to say, how much happier is he? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he likes the cars better there. He likes the people better there. So I feel people really need to get the Formula One out of their heads and go like, okay, what is it that I really like? For example, Kevin Magnussen, he loves NASCAR because he thinks the
Hmm.
cars are raw and tough, you know? And then it comes people that like other types, motocross, you know, big trucks. So it's amazing to have so many categories to choose from and actually make a name for yourself in any of those said categories.
That's
So
right. That's right.
congratulations to you.
Thank you. And it doesn't matter what category you're in. And again, this applies in all forms of life. Formula One is Formula One. We all know it's the pinnacle of our sport, right? But there's a lot of drivers in there who don't look happy. Just like a job or a career outside of motor racing, maybe it's you earn a lot of money or you have a special title or whatever. That doesn't mean you're going to be happy. And look,
Right.
I have had certain contracts in my career, teams or environments that I've driven for, which are very competitive and got lots of great results, but it hasn't been a cohesive team environment where you wake up in the morning excited to go to the
Right.
racetrack. That seems so backward when this is our passion, and what we do is so amazing, driving these race cars. But there are times, and I can vouch from personal experience, where the pit garage is a toxic
Yeah.
place. And so, whether you're at GT or you're coming up in junior categories or you're racing, I don't know, something no one's heard of in some weird part of the world, like whatever it is, you have to seek happiness, right? You have to seek an environment where the people around you build you up, and you are a real team. We are not an individual sport.
Definitely.
Of course, the drivers get all of the limelight, but we are actually a very small cog in the wheel. So yeah, what you're saying is 100% right. There's a smorgasbord of things to choose from, and and whichever one you choose, you have to seek happiness, because when you're happy, you perform your best.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And that's the thing. So many people don't realize how important a team is. I mean, especially in these kinds, of environments that you're away from home, so many weeks or months of the year, your team ends up becoming your family. So it's so
They do.
important for you to, like you said, be in a positive environment, have a nice team with you, supporting you. They end up being your family in a way.
They do. And I had this conversation actually with my cousin Jackson a couple of weeks ago. So Jackson isn't a Lester family, but his last name's Evans. So for some of your listeners may have heard of him, he's racing in the Porsche Super Cup and also World Endurance Championship, both with Porsche. So he's an amazing talent, the fifth driver in our family to do this. So he's Europe, I'm Asia, and we're both doing our thing.
There you
But we had this conversation where this year his co-driver is his best friend, Matt Campbell.
Nice.
I had a similar situation 2 or 3 years ago before COVID, where I got to drive with one of my closest friends, and I said to Jackson, how cool is it? Like, you must be loving this environment. He said, every day is like, it's so relaxed and it's fun. But of course we perform, we do our job, we take it seriously, but we have a great time, and it shows in his results, and it showed in our results when I had the same situation. We were just working up win after win after win, like it was going out of fashion. And I think a lot of it came down to the fact that we were so relaxed and we were in such a good space. So that just harks back to what we just said, that the environment's so important.
Definitely. Yeah. So it was a bit of a Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris situation, working with the best
100%.
friend.
Yeah, and you can see that. And of course, you're a F1 podcast. We speak about Formula One a little bit. There would have been a lot of people who would have had some opinions about what would have happened this year with Carlos going to Ferrari, with Lando remaining at McLaren, obviously with Daniel coming in, whether or not Daniel and Lando would actually vibe the same way, because they're two very big personalities, right?
Yeah.
But I think I'm sure you will agree. Lando has really matured this year.
Yes.
You notice he's a lot less silly on social media. He's balancing it more. He's now the team leader. And I think
that's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have picked that, right? And of course, like Daniel's finding his feet and what have you. But I feel like at the moment, I think people will be a little bit surprised as to how well Lando is going comparatively, and how well he has shouldered the responsibility of leading the team.
Definitely. I absolutely agree with you. And also Carlos Sainz, I'm so impressed with how well adjusted he's at Ferrari.
Yeah.
He's my favorite driver, to be honest. And Ferrari is my favorite team. So for me, I was a little bit scared. I didn't want the same thing that happened to Vettel to happen to Carlos. So I was like, how is Ferrari going to be this season? But apparently the car is very good. Carlos is doing a great job also. And who is your favorite driver of the Formula One?
I figured you were going to ask me this question. Look, to be honest, I like Daniel because he's from my part of the world, and
I don't know why I knew you were going to say him.
his sense of humor is very. I mean, Kiwis and Aussies, we're essentially cousins. We're very close to each other in every way. I really am impressed with Carlos, and I think Carlos, his personality has shone through his McLaren years. Perhaps when he was at Toro Rosso, he was kind of forgotten about. He's really shown through his time at McLaren his true colors, and I think he's got real potential that hasn't been untapped yet. Obviously, Pierre is going amazing with Toro Rosso. I quite like, just for something different, Yuki's crazy personality as well. Although, he obviously, being young, he needs to be harnessed, because, with how cutthroat Red Bull are, it's not going to take many more accidents and missing out on Q3s before he gets flogged off for someone else. But yeah, favorite driver. To be honest, it's not a great answer, but I don't usually follow a driver. I like to look at the grid as a whole, and every year somebody stands out, and I kind of follow that guy for a year, and maybe the next year someone else. And this year it's definitely Carlos actually this year for same as you. Like I was really
this
yeah,
year.
I was really interested to see. I think this would have been his biggest test yet, because the pressure of Ferrari and their amazing reputation and history. Of course, such a tough year last year, and also having someone as fast as Leclerc as his teammate. I think he's probably got one of the hardest jobs. So, yeah, I think he'll get a win before the end of the year.
I
Yeah.
hope
What do you
so.
think?
I hope so.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was exactly like you in the sense that I did not have a favorite driver. And then everybody would ask
Changes.
for months. And I was like, you know what? I think I need a favorite driver.
What about Sergio? You're Mexican.
So I chose Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly, maybe.
Yeah.
I know what you said earlier, everybody gets forgotten in Toro Rosso, to be honest.
Yeah.
Pierre Gasly is doing such an amazing job to put Alpha Tauri on a pedestal, to make it a team of its own. But that was something that would never happen. I mean, you have Alfa Romeo and you're like, yeah, the school of Ferrari, whatever. But then you're like, oh, Alpha Tauri has two amazing drivers. Yuki Tsunoda is doing great. I still feel he needs to mature a little bit because he gets a little crazy when he loses. So, but it's got two amazing drivers. I do not see Pierre going back to Red Bull. I think that seat is definitely for Yuki. But like you said, he has to be harnessed so that Helmut Marko actually wants him in the team.
Yeah. And see, from our part of the world too, we've got Liam Lawson in Formula 2, and he's obviously with our whole country is really hoping that he will be next in line. And I think he is next in line because he's going so well. He's winning straight off the bat in Formula 2. But the question is, just like Brendan Hartley, of course, another Kiwi, when you go into AlphaTauri, is the environment going to be one you can thrive in? Now, with Pierre in there, I don't see it being an issue because he's not like a Max or a Lewis to an extent where it's their team. Pierre seems to be a lot more grounded and a lot more of a team player in that sense. I don't want to speak out of turn. We can obviously only read off what we see. But as a young driver coming in, you don't want to have Max as your teammate. Like that pressure would most drivers will fail under that pressure. The AlphaTauri dynamic at the moment, if you to come into that second car, I think it would be a good environment for a young driver where they wouldn't have, the weight of expectation on their shoulders.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So I'm hoping that a Kiwi will be next.
Yeah, he's hoping that definitely. I would love to see new nationalities in the Formula One, to be honest. I hope Pato O'Ward really makes it to the Formula One.
Yes.
He's thriving.
He's amazing.
He's thriving. I mean, and he's from the same city as I am, so
is he?
He has to be in the Formula One. But at the same time,
I follow him, and I follow all drivers who have raced in Japan very closely because I've done most of my racing in Japan. When Pato did a little bit of Super Formula there, of course, I started to follow him a bit more closely. He's also with McLaren, which of course is a team that was formed in New Zealand. So any connection we can make, then we feel a little bit of pride in supporting those drivers too, because we are a tiny little country. So if someone's in a McLaren, then we feel like they're part of our team.
Of course.
So he's got I think he's got a lot of fans here. Even though Scott Dixon and Scott McLaughlin are in IndyCar, we also want to see McLaren succeed. So Pato is definitely up there in our hearts as well. Yeah.
Definitely. So we'll see what happens with him. But my previous guest has a question for you.
For me?
Yes, for you.
¿Qué es en su vida el automovilismo deportivo?
How is motorsport a part of your life?
Well, motorsport is my life. So, that's in its most broad sense. Motorsport is everything. That's a blessing and a curse, because I've found, and COVID has been a very important time for what I'm about to say, is that because I've always thought my entire life was motorsport, my results on the racetrack were a reflection in my mind of if I was a good person, my self-worth. So if you have a bad result, then you feel like internally like you have really failed, right? And so it's been very important with COVID to reflect and to separate motorsport and take it from being my entire life to my passion, but realizing that outside of that, there's other things that I should find love and fulfillment in. So what is motorsport? Motorsport is my passion, and it's not my entire life, but it's a very big part of it. And I feel lucky, fortunate, blessed every day that I can wake up and know that my job is to drive fast race cars. So
Definitely. Adrenaline to its max.
Oh yes.
What a
There's
great
nothing better.
therapy.
Yeah, it is indeed.
And as a last question, I know it's still COVID and it's still a bit unpredictable to say,
Sure.
but what do you see yourself doing in the future? How do you see yourself in the future? And I don't mean like in 10 years. No, I mean just like a future. It could be 1 year, it could be 5 years. How do you see yourself?
I maintain the plan, if you like, or the intention that as long as I love racing like I still do, I will keep driving as long as I can until either I get too slow, which comes with age, or I stop loving it. Because I think if you stop loving it, then those last tenths of a second, you lose them. You have to leave it all on the track. So from that side, I will drive as long as I can, while I still love it and perform well. But outside of that, I would like to work post-career. I'd like to work with animals. Yeah, with animals and the environment. So I'm ambassador for the SPCA here in New Zealand. So I do a lot of work with rescued animals and injured animals, and I'm also plant-based as well. So I'm very big on animal welfare and the environment. So I realized that driving race cars doesn't really fit with the environmental side of things. That's something I have to grapple with, but post-career, that's a passion of mine that I would like to explore further. And I guess on that note too, I'm keeping a very close eye on e-racing, not sim racing, but electric racing. Because if an opportunity came up, if an opportunity came up for me to drive an electric GT car, I would jump at it, because it fits with my my other passions and how I live my life. And I think it's also the future, right? Is love it or hate it, it's the future. So if I could get in there on the ground floor before it explodes, then it would give me perhaps some job security moving forward too. So
of course.
So I guess if that kind of answers your question, that's where I see myself.
Great answer, actually. Much deeper than I thought.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So, that's amazing. It was such an honor and such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Such a nice talk. Love hearing, a different perspective, that not everything in life is about racing for people involved in motorsports. So this was amazing. Thank you so much for being here, and I wish you the best of success in the future.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat, and COVID depending, I would love to come and visit Mexico one day, and maybe do a race there. You never know.
To the Formula E, who knows?
You never know. There's already 3 Kiwis. There could be a 4th.
There you go.
But yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming all the way to the end of the interview, and see you again in 2 weeks on another episode of A Girl Talks Formula One. Bye.